not inappropriate. I'm sure Alicia will jump in with us as soon as she is. I know she's still logged in, so she might be just away from the from away from the computer for a second. So I greatly appreciate your ability, both of you, to come in. And just so that you know, I'm going to record our session this evening, and then I'll make it public for you and your other peers. In case there are additional questions, if you want to watch it again, to possibly review information that was shared, just for whatever the recording is for, right? As to however you want to use that. Because what you're going to experience obviously has, it is very, very much tied to you becoming a teacher. And so it's extremely important. It is a time-consuming, complex examination. It has varying levels and layers, and of course, without the benefit of the curriculum change integrated into the practicum before you took it, this is really a prime opportunity to prepare you over the next couple of days, months, weeks, so that you're ready to go for January. So
now, is this the time to ask our questions, or would we wait and just gather our questions and ask during orientation time?
No, I think definitely should ask some questions tonight. You're definitely going to have additional questions at orientation, quite frankly. I think what this should be for the both of you is the deer in the headlights kind of night. And I mean that politely, and in all sincerity. It's a good opportunity for you to just sit back and go, oh wow, and then just say, okay, let me really digest what was just told to me, and then exactly orientation, you get that opportunity to really come back with a fresh set of eyes going, okay, I have some questions. So let me just start off by saying the following. We'll preface everything with the following statement that we have been trying to communicate as effectively in various ways, so that all are aware. Regardless of your completion of the PPAT, meaning whether you pass the exit performance assessment or if a candidate does not, or they fail the PPAT, a candidate will graduate from Wilmington University. We are not going to withhold graduation from a candidate, meaning they register for the correct coursework, they pass all requirements of Wilmington University for student teaching, they're going to graduate. The issue for the PPAT passage failure relates to licensure and certification within the state of Delaware. So this is really the first aha moment that I think candidates realize when we say the following. You will graduate, however, at the time frame of degree conferral, when the semester is done and the required days of student teaching are done, and everyone is finished what they're supposed to do. They've completed the PPAT, passed or not passed. There's this act per the university called degree conferral. Now that's a critical component of the process. This process relates to the following. The registrar's office communicates to the state of Delaware your conferred degree, meaning the completion of the degree and the licensure components and so forth. Now, here's the issue that relates to the PPAT. There is a message that is placed on your degree after conferral, which is then sent to DOE. The message will indicate one of the two following messages or intents. The first one will be very clear. It will say you've graduated from a nationally accredited institute, a higher ed institute, and you have passed all licensure requirements for the state of Delaware. Now, if you pass the PPAT, you get that message on your degree.
Okay.
Now, if you don't pass the PPAT, the message that is placed on the degree only says you've completed a program of study from an accredited institute of higher ed. The licensure message is not on the conferred degree. Now this is critical, because now you have two forms of degree conferral, one for passage, one for failure. What does that mean to the state of Delaware? The passage of the PPAT equates to what's called initial licensure. Now, in the state of Delaware, 4 years of initial licensure is based upon passage of the PPAT and the completion of your degree program. What is initial licensure? It is upon employment you receive, if you will, a temporary or initial license. It's good for 4 years. The district that you're working for works with the state of Delaware. You are required to participate and engage in a variety of mentoring activities, and there are a host of other things that the district will work with you on. Of course, that's upon employment. But that initial licensure is good for 4 years. Now, that's, of course, based on passage of PPAT, the magic message on your degree conferral, and the completion of your degree per WILMU. If you do not pass, a candidate does not pass the PPAT, then the Delaware Department of Education receives that different message on the degree conferral. That is the trigger for the state of Delaware to provide the candidate what's called provisional licensure. Now, this is extremely important, because provisional licensure is only good for 1 year. And within that 1 year time frame, the candidate must retake the exit performance assessment and pass if they wish to continue employment, and also to move into the 3 additional years that are connected to initial licensure.
Okay.
So you see the significant difference here.
Now, would this change if you didn't pass? Would it change your degree to something different? Like, since it's not licensure, would that mean that it would be like the education studies?
No, not at all. No, you still are going to be maintained in the licensure tract. It just means that one candidate has passed the PPAT. They meet all requirements of the state of Delaware for full licensure, or what we call the initial licensure. Or a candidate has completed their licensure tract degree, but they have not completed all the state level requirements for licensure, equating to non-passage of PPAT, giving them provisional. So your degree does not change whatsoever.
Okay. It's just you have timing, as far as you have a year if you fail to retake. Say you passed 3 out of the 4 tasks. Do you have to take all again, or just the one?
That is an excellent question. And actually, your question has 2 responses. The first is, this is based upon employment. So let's say you graduate in May and you get a job in August. That would be the start of your first year of the provisional licensure. So sometime in January, the candidate who receives provisional licensure would have to retake the exit performance assessment in its entirety. So let me then say, this is the second part of your question. any candidate taking the PPAT failing a particular task leading to failure of the PPAT, for example, one would have to retake the entire test, all 4 sections, and more importantly, it would have to be all brand new work. You would not be able to go back in and resubmit the same work that you did previously.
Right.
So here is a good, I would say, connection to the oh crap moment that relates to the exit performance assessment. Let's say I'm a candidate right now this semester who's taking the exit performance assessment for the first time. Now, I certainly have a candidate who has to retake, resubmit is the correct word. So let me start using the correct terminology. They have to resubmit task 2. They scored poorly. The candidate knows why they scored poorly. They forgot to upload their evidence and their artifacts to the ETS portal. It was an honest mistake. The poor person just was focused on entering in the responses and completely forgot to upload any of the documents, and as such got an extremely low score. And so resubmission of this task, now that resubmission, that requires the candidate to collect all brand new data, all brand new documents, and have to completely rewrite the submission.
Mm-hmm.
It is not I'm going to go back in and tweak a little bit of what I've written. Can't do that. No. ETS is very clear about this. They do not allow that. So we go then full circle to your question, Christine, which is, if I fail the PPAT altogether while I'm student teaching and I graduate and I get provisional licensure, the first year in which I am employed by that district, I then have 1 year to redo the entire exit performance assessment.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is a big deal, obviously, because now you're thinking, okay, it's like, wow, I'm not able to resubmit just a section. I can't just tweak what I've done before. I've got to redo it all. So the suggestion that we have been giving to the candidates for this particular semester at the very beginning, very clear: record as many lessons as you can teach, that you are teaching. Not only record those lessons, but collect as much evidence and documentation that relate to each and every task that's required, that is scored by ETS, let's put it that way. And you want to have a structural design as to which task that you may rewrite based upon the scores that are provided by ETS. So what that means is candidates are always constantly collecting evidence and data, so that if they do and must resubmit for a particular task, they have that information at their fingertips and can then begin rewriting the entire task for resubmission via the deadline that's required.
Okay.
So, that then part of this then is the preface of where you two are going to be at among your peers for January, which is not just the actual application of the exit performance assessment, but starting us off on the right foot, which you'll hear during orientation. I will fully explain this at orientation as well, so you'll have the benefit of the doubt. But it's important to hear it, which is what I just said. This sets the tone. This is what's going to happen. This is why we're doing this, obviously. And now let's get into the specific steps or tasks, if you will, of the examination.
Mm-hmm.
Do either of you have any questions as to the licensure and certification component of the degree per PPAT or the state of Delaware?
I just want to know, once we pass the PPAT, that would be the only time we would have to take it, or we have to take it every 4 years once you're employed as a teacher?
That's a very good question. So once you're certified through Wilmington University and the degree program, and then the candidate passes the PPAT and they get initial licensure, that first 4 years, you do not have to take the PPAT ever again. That is not how this works. It's just a one. It's like the Praxis Core and Praxis 2. They're all just prerequisites or requirements of initial licensure. Now, what you're talking about is relicensure, or the licensure time frame. Your license after the first 4 years, then you go on a 5-year cycle. So you have your initial license for 4 years, then you're given your license, your active license within the state of Delaware. Then you go on that very first year, a 5-year cycle, which you must participate and engage in a variety of activities that are clearly identified by the state of Delaware and also your district. A lot of this is like professional development, and some of you might be coming back to get additional coursework, taking a degree program, something of that nature. But every 5 years, you will recertify yourself. Now that has nothing to do with Wilmington University.
Okay.
That is an absolute state of Delaware requirement, which your district, during the mentoring process upon employment, will educate you on.
Okay. All right.
Most of this is done in what we call a clock hour format, meaning you have to engage in so many clock hours of professional development, and I'm using that term loosely right now, but within the last 2 of the 5 years of your cycle. So let's say again, I started a job. Actually, let's take me. Like I've been working now, pretending I'm in a public school system, and I've been working, and this is my first year of my active license for after my initial. So this September, I started my first full year of my license. Now, year 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to participate, as I'm required to do, in all types of professional development. The district will mandate clearly that I have to if I want to keep my job. But I may not use any of that professional development towards recertification. The last 2 of the 5-year cycle, so year 4 and 5, the professional development and other types of activities that I would engage in, those would be used toward my recertification. However, again, that's not something that Wilmington University deals with. That's purely a state of Delaware Department of Education component.
Okay.
Are there any other?
No, I just have a quick question.
Sure.
Back to when we were talking about, say you fail one section of the task. Now, say, I guess during that whole student teaching time is when you can do your resubmission, because obviously after student teaching is done, you're not going to be able to resubmit any of the tasks because you have to do it during student teaching time. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. So say like I got to task 4 and I passed 1, 2, and 3, but 4 I didn't pass, I'm going to have enough time prior to graduation to resubmit that?
That's an excellent question. So I tell you what, I'm just going to go ahead, and I'm on my screen, and as I'm sharing with with both. I'm going to jump into the ETS website, and I think, Christine, that's really a great place to start. Now, of course, we're going to talk about this during student teaching, the orientation as well, but trust me, between now and then, there's going to be so many other questions. It's not going to hurt to hear it again.
Mm-hmm.
The best way that I
Right.
approach this website is clearly, I think, starting with the menu option that's on the left-hand side. Now, the only thing that you don't need to worry about until 2 weeks from now when we talk about it during orientation is registration. So take registration off your desktop for a while, off the horizon. You don't need to worry about that for another 2 weeks. We're going to clearly talk about how to do it and what way to do it and in what capacity. So where you want to really focus in on is the preparation side, the building and submitting tasks, and the scoring of the tasks themselves. So I'm going to jump into building and submitting tasks, and it provides what I think is the most important component of all: when things are due and when do I begin, right? So looking at the spring timeline, it closely follows what we do with the academic calendar per the district in which you will be assigned and or have been already assigned. So, for example, we'll between now and the 2 weeks in December, we'll talk about registration. Obviously, registration closes February 3rd, so we will have that all done within the next couple of weeks. So that's not the big issue. Where the focus comes into play are these dates here, your deadlines for the 4 tasks, and then, as you're indicating, Christine, here, the resubmission window or the opportunity for resubmission. Now, you will clearly see that the resubmission window opens after task 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and there's a specific reason for this. One is that the tasks take approximately 3 weeks to score. So from the deadlines that are being shown to a 3-week interval, you then get a picture as to, okay, I've submitted on February the 8th, and in 3 weeks I'm going to get my scores back, right? Okay. So if by chance, as Christine, you indicate, a candidate fails a particular task, they would then collect the data, analyze where they went wrong per the task score report, and then register on this date, May the 3rd, and submit their work before May 23rd.
Okay, so you have to re-register for the test?
Well, this is a very good question because unfortunately you don't have to re-register for the test. You are opening up or you are registering for resubmission. Resubmission can be one task or all tasks.
Okay.
So then with that is the fee structure. Unfortunately, there's one flat fee for the test, and then if you need to resubmit, whether you're resubmitting one task or all of them, you would then pay $85. Okay, so it's $275 for the examination itself, and if I have to resubmit task 1, not task 1, task 2, 3, or 4, I would pay $85 regardless.
Of how many?
Exactly.
Oh,
Okay, so if I was going to submit task 2, 3, and 4, I'm paying $85. If I'm just going to resubmit task 3, I'm still paying $85. So, it's the additional fee that's a frustration as well, but unfortunately, that's the way that the system is made up. So, this conversation does align to also what is scored. What is scored by ETS versus what is scored by Wilmington University. Task 2, 3, and 4 are scored for points by ETS. And I'll get into that in a second. Task 1 is scored by your Wilmington University faculty, but it does not equal or equate to points towards the exam. Okay? So when we talk about point value and we talk about cutoff scores, you are only talking about task 2, 3, and 4. However, the necessity for task 1 is so severe that if you do not do well in task 1 and don't have the structural design of task 1, it will impact the 3 other tasks negatively.
Oh, okay.
All right? So this is where task 1, even though you don't get any points for it towards the value of the score and the cutoff score per the examination, task 1 is the first critical element for successful completion of task 2, 3, and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So that then should be your next question, which is, well, then what is the Delaware cutoff score for passage? And that would be the magic number of 38. There are 60 possible points within the exit performance assessment. Delaware has identified that 38 is the cutoff score, meaning a candidate would pass the PPAT if they scored a 38 or higher.
Okay.
Okay? So then that leads into what are tasks 2, 3, 4 worth. Task 2 is a 3-element 4-point rubric scale, so that's worth 12 points. So 3 times 4 is 12. And then task 3 is a 4-element 4-point rubric, so that's going to give you 16 points. Task 4 is 4 elements, 4-point rubric, so 4 times 4 is 16. However, task 4 is double weighted, so 16 plus 16, 32, giving you then 60 points.
Mm-hmm.
Task 4, double weighted, obviously denotes then the severity and the strength of that particular task, right? Related to the point value or the cutoff score. Okay, so just stopping there for a second. Any questions?
I don't have any.
I don't have any right now.
Okay. So your deadlines are always going to be something that you need to adhere to. It is what it is. It's just going to be one of those things that we're just going to. I'm going to sound like a broken record for the entire semester as we meet as a group, because Newcastle meets Kent and Sussex, we meet, and during orientation we'll give you the dates and the times and the meeting places. It's all planned out. It's during the day. You're allowed to leave your placement early and come and and participate. It is something that we will just reiterate over and over, and we stay very close connected to that. So the next two things, and then this is where then I think It's just I can't. We'll go into detail, of course, over the next couple of weeks. But I think for tonight's purposes, is just a good solid walkthrough to walk you through, have you take a peek, and then Christine and I'm sure Alicia, right, or is it Alicia?
Yes.
Alicia.
Alicia.
Sorry, Alicia. I apologize.
That's okay.
That if tonight's a good opportunity to ask some questions. So my focus for you would be the following. I would start with your task requirements. So this section here of the website, knowing that you have 4 tasks and that these 4 tasks, exactly as you see here, the requirements, the rubric for all 4. This is the actual examination. What you see here, and when you download these to your computer or desktop, print them out, whatever makes you happy, these writing prompts, it is exactly what you will be asked to write about and then submit for scoring. So there's no mystery here as to what's required of you. What has, I think, caused a hurdle for some candidates is they have not taken this to where it needs to be in terms of the tasks connected to deadlines, connected to what's required, the evidence that I must collect. It's almost as if, and I said this in August, and I'll say it again in January, it is almost like the following. You need to sit down with your calendar and make a graphic organizer and graph out or place out on your timetable where the deadlines are, where you should be collecting evidence and documents for each task, and giving yourself wiggle room to write, because that's what you're going to need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, that will be getting over the first obstacle, because what happens is candidates begin to get too worried about all the other stuff that they have to do for student teaching. Because remember, this is not student teaching, right?
Right.
Even though this is a good evaluation of your performance, because this is what it's all about. It's not about how good the kids are learning. That's not what this test, right? This exam is not looking at the kids. This exam is looking at you, the candidate. So anyway, mapping it out, that's the first K. Then I would download each of these PDF documents. The prompts are very clear. It tells you what evidence that you need to collect. It tells you how many words you'll be able to use, because there is a limit on the number of words that you can actually type into the text boxes. That's the first start. And the second thing that you do is then download every handbook that ETS provides. Now, I will email you a little cheat sheet. I created a PDF document that has links to all the handbooks, so you don't have to go searching for them. You can just use that and just click on them, and it'll open them right up for you. But the idea here is to begin to review the handbooks early on. Now, so that's 2 things. You've got mapping it out, planning it out, then downloading the prompts and reviewing them and preparing them, getting a good gauge as to what you've got to do. Downloading the handbooks, reviewing those. Now why is this so important? ETS is very clear about the following. Your supervisor, whom you will be assigned, myself and the other full-time faculty, during task 1, we can engage in conversation and we can engage in reflective practice and we can engage in feedback to you, the candidate, in the form of questions. We are not allowed to provide you direct feedback. Meaning, if the candidate provides me their task 1 and I read task 1 responses, I could suggest, make the question saying, as the reader, I am not clear as to which factors you are addressing. And hoping that the candidate realizes that what I'm trying to tell them is that they have not identified clearly the specific factors that they have to address, meaning they haven't called them out clear enough. Right. So what you're going to find is we're going to engage in a lot of what we call Socratic coaching and questioning. Now that's allowed for task 1. The moment we move into task 2, 3, and 4, unfortunately, you will find that we are more resource people. However, resource people are limited, meaning you can come to us and say, I don't know how to compress the video for task 4. We are allowed to say, well, gee, here are some websites and here are some programs that help you compress your video. But will we be able to do it for you? No. Are we able to help you pull out the 15 minutes that you need? No. Are we able to analyze and identify and tell you what you've done wrong? Absolutely not. So, what we need to do here, and what we do, I think, very well from the get-go, is create an environment and a culture understanding that we try to provide as much information up front to assist you as you go through the seminars and as you write and compose, eventually submitting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the tasks, downloading them, preparing handbooks, then once you've done that, then get into some of the technical stuff. First get over the hump of what are the responses, what am I writing, what does it do, let me map it out, let me get a feel for what I can and what I should be doing, and then jump into the technical side of things. And there are a lot of technical, they have 3 technical handbooks that will assist you in the smallest of details, the minute, if you will, and really give you the direction necessary. We are allowed to provide you technical responses. So if you say, how do I link these words to the particular document that I've uploaded? Well, we can help you with that. We can show you in the manual where it clearly says this is how you do it. So that's a little bit different. But some of the other things, unfortunately, and we clearly define what those things are during orientation, because everybody needs to hear that message the same. Okay, so that's where I would start with this. And for the 2 of you and your other peers who have not engaged in the curriculum, if you haven't downloaded the tasks as of yet, I would do so that you come on December the 5th or the 6th and say, here are my questions based upon my review and reading of the reading of the the requirements and the writing prompts. What is that I need to be prepared for? Because during orientation, we are allowed to be very open-ended. We do not have to. You are not student teaching yet, and you haven't registered for the exam yet, and you haven't started answering any questions. So we can be, guns blazing in orientation, and we can answer any question, and we can be very clear, and we can tell you exactly what you should and shouldn't do. Okay.
Okay.
But once we hit the January time frame, we're then become restricted. And so that then leads me to then this next area, which is after you download all of the tasks and all of the documents and items that relate to the tasks, go to the library of examples. So on this page where it says library of examples, you'll see that ETS has provided actual student responses for task 1, 2, 3, and 4, and has provided exemplars for a score of 1 versus a score of 4, right? And so you're able to see the type and style of writing, the mechanisms and the way that the candidates have either connected to the responses or that there is a lack thereof, equating to a lower score. I will say this and be very clear, and you'll hear during student teaching. You must be very analytical in your writing, very technical. We want to move away from descriptive writing, even though descriptive writing is required in task 1 and is a requirement within the tasks. You want to be very technical in nature because, for example, in task 1, there's a requirement for you to identify a community factor that influences the education of the students in the district. So this community factor, it could be many things. Where the technical writing comes in, the analytic writing comes in, is you're very clear. You're just going to write it out on your statement. My community factor is blah, blah, blah. You can't get any more clear than that, right? And then you have to go into and tell them what you would do for this and that and the other thing. And as you read this, you will see more as to what I mean, and we'll dive deep. But it's when the questions asks the following: provide a rationale for the community factor, or just that statement, provide a rationale. That is your description. That is then where you provide a lot of detail, a lot of connectivity to your original initial response. And this is where candidates get confused, because we've always been taught, right? More detail, more detail, more detail. And what we need to train ourselves here for this event is to be technical first and then provide the detail. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
So I would recommend then that your next step would then to download each of these exemplars for tasks 1 through 4 and review each of them in preparation for orientation. Now, granted, this is where your peers over the last few semesters have had an advantage because we've gone through this with them, right, during curriculum, during practicum. So, you know, I know that you're at a slight disadvantage because you haven't had the opportunity to engage in practical application of these. But getting into it now in preparation for orientation gives you at least more than the typical or traditional candidate, in which they have no idea what the test is until they're given it. So, okay, so let me stop there. So we've gone on to another step here. What questions do you have for me?
I don't have anything right now.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just have to get on the website and look at the different tasks. I don't have Skype, so to look at what follow you right now.
That's okay. That's okay. A lot of this is going to take time to digest. I'd recommend, and take it into small chunks. Take a look at task 1, the rubric first. Look at that. Then, give yourself a break. Next day, take a look at task 2. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And here's the thing that I'm asking everyone to do is come December 5th and 6th, depending upon your location, for your orientation, because we have 2 orientations, one for Kenton, Sussex, and one for Newcastle. Whichever one that you're attending that you've been invited to. You're going to want to come with questions. And my suggestion is to, when you print these out, staple them all together and write your questions right on the task, where it is you have the question. Because because what we're going to do is we're going to have candidates who have taken the examination this semester. They're going to be sitting with you at your tables, and they're going to be able to give you the direct responses as to what they did and how they were successful in completing the examination. In addition to then what we all do as a group as well. So you'll have the benefit of not only what we'll be talking about, but also your counterparts, your peers who have gone through the exam and what they've done to be successful.
That's helpful.
Okay, yeah. So the orientation is still, for Newcastle County, the time is still going to be on December 6th from 1 to 4?
That is correct.
Okay.
I'll be at that one as well.
Very good, very good. So getting in, taking a look, that's very important. Downloading, like I said, all those things. So on my end for you right now, I would say the only, I guess, last step for the two of you, you and your peers, is to really take a look then at this last section, the ancillary materials for the PPAT, the glossary, the lesson plan format, daily reflection, the professional growth plan, the reflective practice handbook. All these last few items are, even though not much is paid, ETS doesn't give them, I think, as much attention. I do. And the reason being is what I have found over the past 2 semesters, one being the pilot and now this year being full implementation, is that candidates sometimes are not talking the language of education, and the glossary that is used per ETS will assist you with that language. What I mean by that is, what it's like, as an example, what is the difference between an instructional strategy and a learning activity? The glossary fully describes that. When they say assessment per ETS, what do they mean? The glossary fully describes that. Now, it's a big document, granted. However, I think it's one of those key elements that has assisted the candidates who have scored very high in the assessment this semester. They have indicated time and time and again they've gone back to the glossary to ensure that they are connected to what is being required, that they're using the language of the exam. Mm-hmm. And so that would be then my last step for the two of you, is to go into this particular section and download these other additional items and review them, specifically the glossary. In fact, I had one candidate who printed it out and just, she created like a 3-ring binder, not a really big one, but a 3-ring binder, and she copied all the tasks. She printed them out. She printed out the glossary. She made it in tabs, and she had the glossary in the back. And every time she heard something that she didn't understand, every time she read something she didn't understand, or more importantly, she was out in the field and the teacher was saying one thing, but it related to the same thing ETS was saying, but ETS and the teacher were saying 2 different things. They weren't using the same line. She was able to draw the lines, the connection between the two. Right. And that helped out tremendously, because see, that's where we're not allowed to help you, because that's part of the assessment, the ethics behind the assessment. So strongly suggesting that you review the glossary as well. So let me then leave it open to the two of you as to just open-ended questions about the exam, so it can range from implementation, administration, to anything. I'm happy to respond.
I had a quick question in regards to the setup of the test in relationship to student teaching itself with the assignments that we have. Great. Now, are they going to be anything like I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to ask this question, but basically,
Oh,
like
it's a good question.
As we're doing our work for student teaching,
Mm-hmm.
will this kind of correlate or into what we're doing already and kind of be at the same pace?
It's an excellent question. So, and I know that Alicia, you can't see, so I will email this to the two of you, and you'll get a copy
Okay.
during student teaching as well.
Okay.
There are a number of things that you have to do for student teaching per Wilmington University. You'll be completing a professional responsibilities form, and I'm not expecting either of you to write this down, so don't. I'll just walk through it. You'll be required to maintain a journal. You'll complete a number of surveys. There's a midterm and a final evaluation. There are lesson plans that are formally observed. So all of these things that you have to do for Wilmington University, the question, Christine, you're asking is, do they align to the exit performance assessment?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have had candidates this semester who have used their lessons that are evaluated by supervisors per WilmU, also use them as their submissions for PPAT. They may certainly do that. Yes, you could certainly do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I caution, I even though that is a candidate's choice, I caution against that. The reason being is I go back to the beginning, and I always go back to that in mind, which is the tasks that you're doing are based on good teaching, teaching itself. And one of the first things I will say, and you'll hear me doing student teaching, is collect evidence often, record as many lessons, record often, and document often. So if we attempt to align what we're doing in student teaching as Wilmington University requirements to the PPAT, we begin to limit ourselves in what I was just saying: evidence, artifacts, recording. If we just say to ourselves, I'm student teaching and I have these set things I have to do for Wilmington University, but I'm just going to make this a part of who I am as a student teacher, and I just collect as much evidence and I record often, it becomes just daily practice with this. Going back to then, you have at the university level 3 formally observed lessons. You're going to be teaching hundreds of lessons during your time frame in student teaching. There are going to be tons of lessons that you'll be just engaging in. 3 of them will be formally evaluated over a course of time, beginning, middle, end. Gives a good snapshot and picture of your performance during your student teaching. Could you use those 3 within the PPAT? Absolutely. Absolutely, you may do so. No one's saying you can't. It's just that I always go back to, and I sound like a broken record, I'm sorry, but just expect the best, plan for the worst. And in that way, it always goes back to collecting as much evidence, collecting all the documentation, recording as much as you can. And everything else that you will do for student teaching is Wilmington University specific, so it really does not align that much to the PPAT. So there are some things that are very specific to WilmU that are only WilmU. There are the lessons and so forth that you're doing that are observed for WilmU that could be integrated to PPAT. Sure.
Right.
Does that make sense? Does that help? And we go over a couple of examples as well during student teaching, some positive and some negatives, because I like everyone to be fully aware as to what they might be getting themselves into if they wait sometimes. And the I guess the best way to look at this too is that everybody is going to be unique. Not everyone has the same mentor teacher. Not everyone is going to be placed in the same grade level. And everyone's experience is unique. And so some candidates may be doing similar things, and then someone's going to be doing something completely different. And that's appropriate, and it is extremely appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good question. Thanks, Christine. Are there any others?
I can't think of anything right now. I'd have to go into the website and take a look at it and everything.
Sure. Christine?
I think I'm good. I'm just going to read up on all this, and I'm sure I'll have questions come orientation time.
Yeah.
Well, good. I will email then to the two of you not only the document that I was just showing, but some other additional information as well. And as you dig deep into the task between now and orientation, if you have questions and or you'd like to talk about it, just let me know. And I would be happy to set up something so that you can chat about it in more depth, because you and there's about 2 or 3 others who completed practicum prior to the changes. So I'm happy to try to provide as much information up front in preparation so that you're successful.
Thank you.
And as far as the PPAT test, is there an actual test number for that to be registered for to look at it, or no?
Yes, when you go into the registration requirements, you'll see it'll tell you exactly what you do. You have to set up an account. It tells you which examination to purchase. But we'll go through that at orientation, because we set up a special voucher system that you can purchase. So if either of you are using financial aid, then you can utilize the financial aid to pay for the voucher and not have to come out strictly out of pocket.
Okay.
But we'll talk about that at orientation, because that's for all candidates.
Okay. Okay.
Should we have anything registered? Should we be registered for anything currently?
Yes, you can go ahead and register for your student teaching course.
Okay. Because I did put in I registered, I think, maybe like 2 weeks ago, and it was just pending approval.
Yes, so it's probably in my purview. I'm either checking on one of two things. As long as you have Praxis Core and you have Praxis 2, and then of course the other side of that is all clearance items, tuberculosis, criminal background check, health authorization, and then of course the last check is the placement connection, with the placement process, and then I approve registration.
Okay, so will I know when I?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you'll get a confirmation from the registrar's office. It'll automatically show up on your schedule as well. And Christine, if I'm not mistaken, I have seen your registration request. I think I'm just waiting for finalized placement.
Yep.
Very good. Very good. Excellent. Well, again, if there's any additional questions, it's my pleasure to connect with the both of you as to anything regarding, your clinical semester and the examination. So please do not hesitate to reach out.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
You.
Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.